Sometimes, you meet someone who changes everything. Not in a good way. Not in the way that makes your heart flutter or your world brighter. But in the way that makes you question humanity itself, and wonder how someone you barely spoke to could hate you so deeply. This is the story of a temporary employee, a woman I'd exchanged maybe 3 conversations with, who nearly destroyed my career from the shadows. She arrived as our maternity cover, an executive assistant to the deputy CEO. 21 years old, fresh-faced, and carrying herself like she owned the building. I'll call her the temp because, well, that's all she ever was to me. Someone passing through that I made it my business to be kind to her. I always do. 3 brief conversations, maybe 4. Pleasant exchanges about work, about settling in. I thought nothing of it. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that within a week of her arrival, she had begun her campaign against me. That my manager pulled me aside one afternoon, his face twisted with confusion. "She's been sending complaints about you," he said quietly. "Daily complaints. 3, sometimes 4 a day." The words hit me like ice water. About what? Everything. Nothing. Things that don't make sense. For weeks, she had been painting me as incompetent, negligent, unprofessional. Every interaction we'd never had, every slight she'd imagined, every grievance she could manufacture was being documented and sent directly to my boss, and I had no idea, the moment that changed everything. It was so simple, so ordinary. I was leaving early one afternoon, using the flexible hours I'd earned from countless late nights and weekends. I approached her desk. "Could you cover this task for me this afternoon?" I asked, face to face, clear as day. "Of course," she smiled. "No problem at all." I called my manager, confirmed the arrangement, and left. 2 hours later, my phone rang. "She's here asking where you are," my boss said, his voice tight with barely contained frustration. "She says she has no idea what task she's supposed to cover, and she's claiming you've been missing for hours." The denial was absolute. Complete. As if our conversation had never happened, but this time she'd overplayed her hand. My boss called the colleague who sat beside her. The colleague who had witnessed our entire exchange. We knew then, we were dealing with something much darker than workplace drama. It started with milk. My milk. Fresh milk that I bought myself because I couldn't stand the long life stuff the office provided. She would use it, then demand I replace it, claiming it was a company supply. Then came the microwave meals. Other people's lunches. Personal items that belonged to the staff. When confronted, she would double down, insisting that I was wrong, that I wasn't doing my job, that she would be forced to tell her manager. "Please do," I would always reply. "I encourage anyone with complaints about me to speak to management." But she never did. Instead, the secret emails multiplied. Fabricated conversations. Doctored correspondence. A paper trail of lies that grew thicker by the day. My manager and I began documenting everything. Every false claim, every manufactured grievance, every impossible timeline. We marked the backup tapes, knowing we might need to retrieve the original emails to prove her deception. Other staff members started coming forward, reporting her increasingly strange and vindictive behavior. The deputy CEO, embarrassed by her employees' conduct, quietly told us to ignore her complaints. "Just 2 more months," they said. Then the original assistant returns from maternity leave, and this nightmare ends. But fate had other plans. The original deputy CEO suddenly needed indefinite personal leave. A replacement was rushed in, someone who didn't know the history, didn't understand the pattern. Then came the devastating news: the original executive assistant wasn't returning. The temp was being offered a permanent position. In that moment, I watched her transform. The desperate temporary worker became a predator sensing opportunity. With her original boss gone and a new supervisor to impress, she escalated her campaign against me. Backdated emails. Fabricated complaints copied to her new boss. A carefully constructed narrative that painted her as the long-suffering victim of my negligence and cruelty. It began, over milk that I was carrying my container from the kitchen when she struck. "Don't you think it's rude to take it all?" she called out, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe other staff might like to use that." I was having a bad day. I was tired of her games, tired of her lies, tired of pretending this was normal workplace friction. "You're too dense to understand emails," I replied, my patience finally snapping. "So I'll tell you again, this isn't for staff." Her eyes glittered with triumph. "We'll see who's dense," she said, walking away with purpose. I texted my manager immediately, "The day has come." An hour later, the HR representative arrived, someone who always stopped by my desk, always said hello. Today, she walked straight past me without a word. I knew. In that sterile conference room, surrounded by strangers who didn't know me, I sat across from my accuser. She had prepared, oh, how she had prepared. A thick file of complaints, dates, times, incidents. A performance worthy of an award, she cried. She trembled. She spoke of harassment, of neglect, of a hostile work environment that had crushed her spirit day after day. The new deputy CEO and HR representative listened with growing concern. Here was this young woman, this victim, being terrorized by a senior employee who clearly abused his position. When they asked me to defend myself, I made a request that surprised them. "I'd like to hear every single complaint read aloud first," I said calmly. "Once you've gone through everything she's written, then I'll present my case." For 30 minutes, I sat in silence as she destroyed my character. Every lie, every fabrication, every twisted version of events that had never occurred. It was breathtaking in its thoroughness. When it was over, when she had painted me as the villain of her workplace nightmare, I asked for my manager to join us. "I have 1 or 2 emails that might clear this up," I said quietly. My boss entered carrying a stack of documentation that dwarfed her file. Original emails. Time records. Job logs. Invoices proving her claims were impossible. A mountain of evidence that told a very different story. Then I mentioned the backup tapes, the server records that could prove her emails had been doctored. The staff members who had witnessed her lies in real time. Finally, the emails between myself and her original boss, documenting the entire situation as it had unfolded. The room fell silent. The deputy CEO and HR representative exchanged glances that said everything. "We won't be needing you anymore," they told me. What happened next? I will never forget as long as I live. Her tears of victimhood transformed into something else entirely. Rage. Pure, undiluted fury at being exposed. She began screaming that I was a liar, that this was all revenge because she had rejected my advances. The lies multiplied in real time. A conspiracy involving the entire staff. Social exclusion. Harassment. Workplace bullying. For an hour, she ranted and raved, creating an elaborate fantasy where she was the innocent victim of a coordinated campaign of cruelty. The most chilling part, she seemed to believe every word. In her mind, she truly was the plucky underdog fighting against impossible odds. The righteous victim standing up to workplace bullies, watching someone create their own reality in real time. It was genuinely frightening. The last I saw of her, she was being escorted to her desk to collect her belongings, wailing like her world was ending. Which, I suppose, it was. Today, months later, she called the office demanding a reference. She won't get one. Sometimes I wonder, what drives someone to such elaborate deception? What makes a person you barely know decide that you must be destroyed? I'll never know the answer. But I learned something valuable about human nature, about the masks people wear, and about the importance of documenting everything when someone decides to wage war against your reputation. In the end, the truth won. It always does, eventually, but the scars of being falsely accused, of having your character assassinated by someone you showed nothing but kindness, those take longer to heal. She taught me that sometimes, the most dangerous enemies are the ones you never see coming. Like, subscribe and share.